The night was quiet, too quiet for Daniel's lonely house at the edge of the forest. The sky outside was dark, full of heavy clouds, and the wind howled like a wounded animal. Rain hit the windows again and again, like fingers knocking from the other side. Daniel sat at his small desk, fixing an old tool with tired hands. He lived far away from the city, far away from noise, far away from people. He liked it that way, or at least he told himself he did. But that night something broke the silence. A knock. Not the sound of rain. Not the sound of the wind. A real knock. 3 hard hits on his front door. Thump, thump, thump. Daniel froze. His heart skipped. Nobody came out here. Nobody ever knocked at his door this late. For a second he thought maybe he imagined it, but then the knock came again, softer this time, like someone who was losing strength. Tap, tap. Slowly he stood up. He grabbed the small light on his desk and walked to the door. His boots made a dull sound on the wooden floor. The storm outside seemed louder now, as if nature itself was warning him not to open that door. He placed his hand on the lock, hesitating. "Who's there?" He called out. His voice was firm, but inside his stomach twisted. There was no answer. Only the sound of rain. Then a faint voice, weak and shaking, came through the door. "Please, help." Daniel's blood ran cold. It wasn't a voice he recognized. It wasn't even fully human. The words were broken, like someone who had just learned the language or someone who had forgotten it. Against his better judgment, he pulled the door open, and there she was. An alien woman stood in the rain, trembling from head to toe. Her skin was pale, glowing faintly under the stormlight, and her large silver eyes seemed full of fear. She wore nothing but a torn cloth, ripped and dirty, barely covering her. She looked exhausted, her legs weak, her arms shaking. She could barely hold herself upright. Cuts ran down her arms and strange scars marked her neck. For a long moment, Daniel and the alien woman just stared at each other. Neither moved. Neither spoke. The storm roared around them, but it was like the world had stopped. Finally, she whispered, "Please, let me stay, just one night." Daniel's first thought was to slam the door. His mind screamed at him. Galactic law, everyone on Earth knew it. Helping aliens was forbidden. Punishment was severe. Jail, exile, maybe worse. Humans were not allowed to give shelter, food, or aid to any alien not approved by the Council. And here was one standing right at his door. But then he saw her eyes. Not cold, not dangerous, just desperate. She looked like someone who had run for her life and had nowhere else to go. He swallowed hard. His heart pounded. Logic told him to push her back into the storm, but something deep inside told him not to. "Come in," he said. The woman stumbled forward. Daniel caught her before she fell. She was lighter than he expected, her body weak, almost fragile. He guided her to the chair near his desk, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. She flinched at first, as if afraid of his touch, but then relaxed when she felt the warmth. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Name, Aria." Daniel nodded slowly. "Aria," he repeated. "I'm Daniel." She coughed, a painful sound, and shivered. Her torn cloth dripped water on the floor, and her silver eyes darted around the room like a hunted animal. She looked both relieved and afraid at the same time. Relieved to be inside, afraid that safety would not last. Daniel poured her some water. She drank greedily, almost spilling it. Her hands trembled so much he had to steady the cup. When she finished, she leaned back, closing her eyes. For the first time, she looked like she might sleep. Like she might survive the night, but Daniel could not relax. He walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside. Through the rain, he saw something in the sky. At first, it looked like stars. But no, the stars were hidden by clouds. These were lights. Moving lights. Silent, cold, scanning the ground. Galactic patrol. Daniel's chest tightened. They were searching. They were hunting. And he knew exactly who they were looking for. He turned back to Aria. She sat in the chair, the blanket tight around her, her head leaning against the wall. Her breathing was heavy, uneven, like each breath was a battle. Her torn cloth slipped a little, revealing strange marks on her back. They were not simple wounds. They looked like surgical scars, deep and unnatural. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Who had done this to her? Why? Aria opened her eyes again just for a second and met his gaze. "Please, not tell them," she whispered. "Please." Daniel felt a chill. He had no answers, only questions. But he nodded. "Rest," he said quietly. "I'll keep you safe." Yet even as he spoke, his communicator on the desk lit up with a warning signal. The message glowed in red letters. "Surveillance alert. This sector is under watch." Daniel's hand tightened into a fist. He had broken the law already by letting her inside. There was no turning back now, and outside the moving lights in the storm grew closer. The storm outside had not ended. Rain still hammered the roof, and the patrol lights still glowed faintly in the distance. Daniel sat near the window, his chest tight with fear. Every few seconds he peeked through the curtains to make sure the drones had not landed nearby. His communicator still blinked with the warning, "Surveillance active." Behind him, the alien woman, Arya, shifted in the chair. She coughed weakly, pulling the blanket closer around her shoulders. Her silver eyes half opened, watching him with both fear and trust. She looked small, fragile, almost broken. Yet Daniel could feel something strange in her presence, something more than what he saw. "Why are they after you?" he asked finally. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if the walls themselves might betray him. Arya's lips trembled. She shook her head. "Note cannot say. Dangerous. For you," Daniel frowned. "It's already dangerous. They know someone is here. They're searching. If I don't know what I'm hiding, how can I protect you?" Her breathing grew heavier. She looked at the floor, her fingers clutching the blanket tightly. For a moment, Daniel thought she would answer. But instead, she said only one word. "Secrets." The way she said it sent a chill through him. Secrets that were heavy. Secrets that could destroy. The Marks Daniel walked to his tool drawer and pulled out his small medkit. He had no hospital machines, but he had scanners, injectors, and basic medicine. He knelt beside her chair. "You're injured," he said. "Let me check." Arya hesitated, then slowly nodded. She let the blanket slide down from her shoulders. Daniel tried not to stare, but what he saw froze him. Her back was covered in scars, not the kind from battle. These were clean, straight, surgical. Some looked fresh, still red and painful. Others were older, healed but permanent. Daniel gently touched one of the scars with his scanner. The device beeped. His eyes widened at the result. Missing tissue, strange implants, and a warning. Unknown foreign material detected. He pulled the scanner back, his throat dry. "They experimented on you." Arya closed her eyes and nodded slowly. "Prison, not prison, lab. They take." Her voice broke. She hugged herself tightly as if trying to hold the pieces of her body together. "I escaped. They want me back." Daniel felt his anger rise. Whoever had done this was no doctor. No healer. This was cruelty. Science without mercy. The warning suddenly, the communicator on his desk beeped again. A voice, robotic and sharp, filled the room. "Attention, all citizens. An alien fugitive has escaped containment. She is considered dangerous. Do not engage. Report immediately if sighted. Harboring is a crime against the council." Daniel's jaw tightened. He turned the device off, his hands shaking. Dangerous? She looked like she could barely stand. Lies. The council was lying. He looked back at Arya. She was staring at him, her eyes wide with fear. "You give me to them?" she asked softly. Daniel's chest hurt at the question. He didn't answer right away. The smart choice, the safe choice, would be to turn her in. But something in him, something human, refused. "No," he said firmly. "Not after what they did to you." Arya's lips trembled, and for the first time Daniel saw tears in her silver eyes. The fever. Later that night, Arya grew weaker. Her skin burned hot. Her breathing came in sharp gasps. Daniel laid her down on the small couch, checking her pulse. She was burning up. He injected her with a stabilizer from his medkit. It slowed her heartbeat, but her chest still rose and fell in uneven rhythm. Daniel's mind raced. He had seen many illnesses, but this was different. He placed the scanner over her chest. The screen showed something that made his blood run cold. Her lungs were not normal. They were damaged, almost destroyed, barely working. Some strange artificial system kept her alive. Daniel stepped back, whispering to himself. She shouldn't even be breathing. Arya opened her eyes for a second, whispering, "They took my breath. They took everything." Then she slipped into a half-conscious sleep. Daniel sat beside her, fists clenched. The council had done more than hurt her. They had turned her into an experiment. And now she was dying. The shadows outside hours passed. The storm slowly calmed, but Daniel could not rest. He sat near the window, eyes on the sky. The patrol lights were closer now. Drones flew in patterns, scanning the ground with bright beams. One of them passed directly over his roof. Daniel held his breath. Arya stirred on the couch, coughing again. He rushed to her side, holding her hand, whispering, "Quiet. Please, quiet." The drone's light paused over the house for a terrifying moment. Daniel thought they had been discovered. But then the beam moved on and the drone flew away. Daniel exhaled sharply. Too close. Much too close. A promise. When dawn finally came, Daniel's eyes burned with exhaustion. Arya was still weak, her breathing ragged. He sat beside her, watching her sleep. He thought about his life before this night. Quiet, simple, safe. And now, everything had changed. She had secrets. She was hunted, and he had broken the law by letting her stay. But as he looked at her fragile form, he knew one thing clearly: he couldn't send her away. "Whatever they did to you," he whispered, "I won't let them finish it." Outside, the morning light revealed new shadows. 3 council ships landing on the edge of the forest. Soldiers stepped out, their weapons ready. The hunt had come closer. The sun was weak that morning, hidden behind gray clouds. Daniel stood at the window, staring at the council ships resting on the edge of the forest. Their silver hulls reflected the pale light, and soldiers in black armor moved with cold precision. They were scanning the area, searching for something or someone. His heart told him they would not leave until they found Arya. Inside the house, Arya struggled to sit up on the couch. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale, but her silver eyes were sharp. Daniel rushed to her side. "You shouldn't move," he said softly. But Arya shook her head. "They are close, Always close." Daniel tightened his jaw. He could hear the faint hum of drones outside, sweeping the area like vultures in the sky. His communicator flashed again with another message. He didn't want to look, but he forced himself to. "Attention, citizens. The alien fugitive must be reported. Harboring her is a crime against the Council. Obey the law. Humanity must obey." The words burned into his mind. Obey, obey. But his eyes drifted back to Arya, fragile yet alive because of him. Could he really hand her over to those soldiers? Could he obey such a law? Arya's hand trembled as she reached for him. "If they find me, they kill me. Or worse." Her voice cracked, but her eyes held his. "If you want safe, you give me. But if you want truth, then you keep me." Daniel's throat tightened. He knelt beside her. "What truth?" he asked. She lowered her head, her long hair falling over her face. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she whispered, "Because of what I carry inside." The words sank into him like a stone in water. He leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Arya pressed a hand against her chest where her heart should be strong but was weak. "They took my lungs. They tried to replace. They want to study me, to use me. But I escaped. I carry proof of their crimes." "In me?" Daniel's blood boiled. Proof. Experiments. Crimes hidden under the banner of law. Now he understood why the Council called her dangerous. Not because she was a threat to humans, but because she was a threat to their lies. Outside, a sharp voice echoed through a loudspeaker. "This sector is under investigation. All citizens must remain in place. Cooperation is required." Boots crunched on wet soil. Soldiers were getting closer. Daniel's house was no longer just his home. It was a trap waiting to close. He turned to Arya. "We need to hide you, now." She tried to stand, but her legs shook and gave way. Daniel caught her, lifting her into his arms. She was light, too light, as if the experiments had taken even her strength. He carried her down to the basement where he kept his old equipment. It was cold, dusty, but it would shield her from scanners if he used his machines correctly. He laid her gently on a cot and turned on a small device. A faint hum filled the room. It was a disruptor, something he had built years ago to block signals. It wasn't meant for hiding aliens, but maybe it would be enough. Arya looked at him with tired eyes. "Why do this?" "You break your law for me." Daniel hesitated. The law was clear. The punishment was death or exile. But when he looked at her, he remembered the scars on her back, the weakness in her breath, the way she had begged not for power or wealth, but simply for one night of safety. "Because the law is wrong," he said finally. "If obeying means letting them hurt you, then I'd rather be guilty." Her silver eyes glistened with tears and she squeezed his hand weakly. "You are..." different from them. Upstairs, a sudden crash shook the walls. Daniel froze. Soldiers had entered his home. Heavy boots stomped across the wooden floor. The sound of armored hands opening doors, moving furniture, checking every corner. His heart hammered like a drum. He shut off the basement light, pulling Aria into the shadows. The soldiers' voices were muffled but close. "Scan for life signs," Daniel cursed under his breath. The disruptor hummed louder, masking Aria's presence. He wrapped an arm around her, holding her close, praying the machine would hold. He felt her trembling against him, her breaths uneven, each one like a knife in his chest. Minutes felt like hours. The soldiers moved through the house, searching, breaking, but they didn't find the basement door. At last their boots moved away. One of them spoke, "Nothing here." "Move to the next sector." The sound faded. Silence returned, broken only by Aria's labored breathing. Daniel exhaled, realizing only then how tightly he had been holding her. But the relief didn't last. The disruptor beeped softly, warning of power loss. It wouldn't hold forever. If the soldiers came back, if they scanned deeper, the secret would be revealed. Daniel pressed his forehead into his hands. He had a choice. Keep hiding her until the inevitable discovery, or act now. Take her fate into his own hands. Aria touched his arm. "You cannot hide me forever," she whispered. "If I stay, you die too." Daniel looked at her, at the broken being who still clung to life despite everything taken from her. He felt anger but also resolve. He had built machines once. He had dreamed of saving lives, not destroying them. He had failed himself, failed his career, but maybe he could save her. "No," he said firmly. "If you stay, I don't die. I fight." Her eyes widened, seeing the fire in his words. For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips, fragile but real. Outside, the council ships hummed louder, engines warming as if preparing for something bigger. Daniel clenched his fists. He knew then he had crossed the line. He was no longer a man obeying laws. He was a man defying them, and the galaxy would not forgive. Daniel's house no longer felt like home. The walls carried the echo of boots that had searched them, and the air felt heavy with fear. He moved quietly through the basement, checking the disruptor again. The machine hummed weakly, the light flickering. It was running out of power. He knew it would fail soon, and when it did, the council would find Aria. She lay on the cot, her breathing shallow, her eyes half closed. Her silver skin glistened with sweat, and every time she tried to speak, her voice broke. Daniel placed the scanner over her chest again. The readings made his stomach twist. Her lungs were worse than before. Damaged tissue, failing systems, and the strange artificial parts inside her body were falling apart. It was a miracle she was still alive. "You won't survive like this," he muttered. His hands clenched around the scanner. "Not unless I do something." Aria opened her eyes weakly. "No, too dangerous," she whispered. "You already risk much." Daniel shook his head. "Dangerous is letting them take you back. Dangerous is doing nothing while you die in front of me." His voice cracked, anger and desperation mixing together. "I won't let them finish what they started." He walked to a corner of the basement, pulling open an old crate. Inside were pieces of machines, wires, and prototypes from his past. Once, years ago, he had been an engineer with big dreams. He had designed technology that could heal, that could change lives, but the council had never approved his projects. Too risky, they said, too independent. His inventions gathered dust, forgotten, until now. He dug through the crate, pulling out a small case. Inside it lay the blueprints and half-built model of something he had once poured his soul into. Artificial lungs. He had designed them for humans who suffered from damaged airways, people who had no hope left, but he had never tested them. The council had shut him down before he could. His hands trembled as he looked at the old design. Maybe, just maybe this could work. Aria's voice was faint but firm. "No human should suffer for me." Daniel turned to her, his jaw tight. "This isn't just about you. This is about what they've done. If I can build this for you, then maybe I can prove them wrong. Maybe I can prove humans don't need their laws to do what's right." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Aria reached out her hand, weak and shaking. Daniel took it and she whispered, "Then I trust you." He squeezed her hand gently. "Then I promise. I'll build you new lungs. I'll give you back your breath." The weight of those words hit him like iron, but he did not back down. He turned to his workbench, powering up the old tools. Sparks lit the dark basement as he began assembling pieces from the prototype. The sound of metal against metal filled the room, steady and determined. Each wire, each bolt, each plate of alloy became part of a silent rebellion. Hours passed. Daniel worked without rest, sweat dripping down his face. His mind raced with calculations. The lungs had to fit her body, which was not fully human. He adjusted, rebuilt, tested, and adjusted again. Arya watched from the cot, her breaths growing weaker, but her eyes locked on him, as if his determination was the only thing keeping her alive. Outside, the storm had ended. But the danger had not. Daniel could hear faint sounds, the soldiers moving deeper into the forest, their voices carried on the wind. The council ships glowed in the distance, their lights like watchful eyes. He knew it was only a matter of time before they returned to his house. At last, Daniel stepped back, staring at the device in his hands. Two shining units of metal and synthetic tissue, connected by thin tubes glowing faintly with blue energy. They were not perfect, but they were ready. His artificial lungs, his life's dream, now had one chance to prove themselves. He turned to Arya. She was barely conscious, her chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. "Arya," he said softly. "It's time." Her silver eyes opened slightly, fear and hope mixed together. If it fails?" Daniel knelt beside her, his voice steady. "Then I fail, not you. But if it works, you live." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You stubborn human." He almost laughed, but his throat was too tight. He prepared the tools, sterilized what little equipment he had, and set the artificial lungs beside her. His hands shook, not from fear of machines, but from fear of losing her. He took a deep breath. "Arya, I need your trust one more time." She nodded weakly. "I give everything." Daniel steadied himself. He began the procedure. His hands moved carefully, connecting wires, replacing the failing parts inside her chest. It was brutal work, made worse by the lack of proper equipment. Sparks flew, alarms beeped, and Arya's breathing slowed dangerously. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. "Stay with me," he whispered again and again. "Stay with me." Halfway through, her breath stopped. Her chest was still. Her silver eyes closed. "No." Daniel's voice broke. He pressed harder, forcing energy into the artificial lungs, praying, begging. "Not like this. Not now." He adjusted the core, reconnected the last tube, and activated the power supply. The lungs glowed brighter, releasing a faint hum. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then Arya gasped. Her chest rose suddenly, air rushing in. The artificial lungs expanded, then released, giving her breath again. She coughed violently, then inhaled deeper than before. Her silver eyes opened wide and tears slid down her cheeks. "You gave me breath," she whispered, her voice stronger, steadier. "You gave me life." Daniel's shoulders sagged with relief. He held her hand tightly, his own tears hidden in the dim light. "No, you fought for it. I just gave you the tools." The moment was fragile, filled with hope. But it did not last. Above them, the ground shook as heavy boots returned to the house. The sound of metal doors slamming, soldiers shouting. The council was back, and this time, they would not leave without finding her. Daniel rose to his feet, fire burning in his chest. He had given her life back. Now he had to protect it. The promise had only just begun. The basement smelled of metal and smoke. Daniel's hands were still stained with grease and blood from the operation, but there was no time to rest. Above them, boots slammed against the wooden floor. Soldiers moved through his house like wolves, sniffing out prey. Every second they drew closer to the basement door. Arya sat upright now, wrapped in the blanket, her chest rising and falling with new strength. The artificial lungs glowed faintly beneath her skin, each breath steadier than the last. She touched her chest in wonder, her silver eyes wide. I breathe again." Her voice was stronger, alive. Daniel placed a finger to his lips. "Quiet," he whispered. His ears caught the sound of heavy footsteps right above them. Dust fell from the ceiling. One soldier's voice echoed through the floorboards. "The readings are strange here." "Check again." Daniel's stomach twisted. He grabbed a small device from his workbench, a pulse disruptor meant to scramble scanners. It hummed faintly when activated, but he knew it would not last more than a few minutes. He crouched beside Arya. "We have to move," he whispered. "If they open that door, it's over." Arya shook her head weakly. "I cannot run, my body." Still weak, Daniel clenched his jaw. He glanced at his machines, his unfinished tools, his old life's work. All of it worthless now if she was caught. He lifted her gently into his arms, feeling the warmth of her breath against his chest. She was heavier now, stronger, but still fragile. The basement door creaked. Daniel froze. A shadow moved under the crack of light. A hand tried the handle. He rushed to the far wall, pressing a hidden panel. A small hatch opened. A tunnel he had dug years ago meant as an escape route in case of accidents. He had never thought he would use it against the council. The door upstairs groaned as the soldiers pushed. Daniel slipped through the hatch with Arya in his arms, pulling it shut behind him. Darkness swallowed them. He crawled forward, the tunnel barely wide enough, his shoulders scraping against dirt walls. Arya clung to him, silent but trembling. Behind them, the sound of the basement door breaking echoed through the house. Soldiers poured in, shouting, scanning. Daniel crawled faster, his heart pounding. The tunnel stretched long, leading out into the forest. When at last he pushed open the outer hatch, cool air rushed in. The forest was quiet except for the distant hum of ships. Daniel pulled Arya out and collapsed behind a fallen log, gasping for breath. She looked at him, her eyes shining in the dim light. "You saved me again," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. They're still hunting." In the distance, drones floated above the trees, beams of light cutting through the shadows. The soldiers spread out in formation, their armor glowing faintly in the misty morning. Daniel knew they had only minutes before the forest was swarming. He sat Arya down gently, then pulled a small pack from under his coat. Inside were scraps of equipment, energy cells, a signal jammer, a compact tool he had built for cutting through metal. Not weapons, not really. But tools could become weapons if used right. Arya struggled to her feet, her breath steadier now. "You should leave me," she said, her voice low but firm. "Alone, maybe you escape. With me, you die." Daniel's eyes hardened. "I didn't rebuild your lungs so you could die in the dirt. If they want you, they'll have to go through me." For the first time, she smiled. Small, sad, but real. "You are not like them. You fight for more." Daniel turned his eyes back to the forest. Shadows moved closer. He activated the jammer, and the drone lights flickered for a second before stabilizing. It bought them a little time, nothing more. He guided Arya deeper into the trees, every step slow and careful, but Arya stopped suddenly, clutching her chest. Daniel spun, panic flashing across his face. "What's wrong?" Her breath came sharp, uneven. "The lungs." "New, but my body. Not ready, pain." Daniel steadied her, anger and fear mixing inside him. "You'll adjust. Just breathe. Focus on me." Above them, a spotlight suddenly swept the trees. A drone hovered close, its scanner beam cutting across the ground. Daniel pulled Arya against him, pressing them both into the mud, praying the jammer would hold. The beam paused on the log, lingered, then passed on. The drone drifted away. Daniel exhaled shakily. Too close. Much too close. The forest around them felt alive with danger. Every sound of snapping twigs or rustling leaves felt like a soldier's step. Daniel's mind raced. He needed to get Arya to safety, but where? His house was compromised. The city would be crawling with patrols. There was only one place left, an old lab in the mountains, abandoned when the council shut down his work. It was hidden, forgotten. There he could repair her properly. There he could fight on his own ground. He helped Arya walk step by step deeper into the woods. Her breath steadied, her silver eyes glowing faintly with determination. She leaned on him, her strength growing with each breath from the new lungs. Behind them, the council soldiers found the escape tunnel. Voices carried through the forest. Orders shouted, engines roaring. The hunt was not over. It was only beginning. Daniel tightened his grip on Arya's hand. He whispered almost to himself, "I'll get you there. I don't care what it takes." The forest lit up with searchlights. The sound of engines shook the trees. The race had begun. The forest was behind them, but the danger was not. Daniel and Arya climbed the narrow trail that led up the mountains. The air was thin, cold, biting against Daniel's skin, but he pushed forward, one hand gripping Arya's arm, the other carrying his pack of tools. Every sound made him tense. Engines still roared in the distance, and faint lights glowed in the sky. The council had not stopped searching. Arya leaned on him heavily. Her new lungs worked, but her body was still weak, not used to the rhythm of human-made breath. Her silver eyes closed often, and Daniel had to shake her gently to keep her awake. Don't stop now, he whispered. We're close. At last the mountain trail opened into a rocky clearing. A broken metal door stood half hidden behind stones and vines. Daniel brushed the leaves aside, revealing the faded emblem of his old research division. This place had been shut down years ago when the council ended his work. No one came here anymore. That was why he had chosen it. He pushed the door open with effort and the sound echoed like thunder in the hollow mountain. The smell of dust and old metal filled the air. Inside, the lab was dark, but the walls were still lined with his abandoned machines, prototypes, and unfinished dreams. Daniel set Arya gently on a work table, brushing away cobwebs. He powered up the emergency lights and a faint glow filled the room. Arya looked around weakly. This your place? She asked. Daniel nodded. Yes, once it was mine. I built things here. I tried to help people. But the council said it was too dangerous. They said humans shouldn't try to go further than their rules. His voice tightened. They didn't want us to think for ourselves. Arya reached out, her hand brushing his. And yet, you still do. Her words gave him strength. He opened his pack and pulled out the tools he had managed to bring. The artificial lungs had saved her, but they were only the beginning. She needed calibration, adjustments, stability. Without that, her body would fail again. He had no time, but he had no choice. He set to work, attaching wires, scanning her chest again. The readings were better than before, but still unstable. The lungs glowed unevenly, and the energy core pulsed irregularly. Daniel muttered to himself, his hands moving quickly. It's not enough. I need to rewire the core, balance the intake. If I fail now... He stopped himself. Failure was not an option. Arya watched him, her eyes soft but steady. You fight for me as if I am your own kind. Why? Daniel froze at her question. He thought of his lonely nights, his abandoned career, his life ruled by silence and regret. He thought of the moment she had knocked on his door, broken and afraid, and how something inside him had refused to turn her away. Because you deserve to live, he said simply, because they don't have the right to decide who breathes and who doesn't. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Then, I will live for you. Daniel swallowed hard, then focused on his work again. He adjusted the energy lines, connected a stabilizer, and tightened the seals. The machine hummed, the glow growing stronger. He activated the calibrator, and Arya gasped sharply as her chest rose with sudden force. Her breaths became steady, smooth, powerful. Her silver eyes widened, tears forming. I breathe. Truly breathe. For the first time, Daniel's shoulders sagged in relief. It's working. You're stable now. But the moment of peace shattered with a sudden boom outside. The mountain trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Daniel rushed to the door and peeked out. His blood went cold. Council soldiers had found the trail. Their ships hovered above the clearing, engines blazing, weapons glowing with deadly light. Soldiers marched toward the entrance, their armor shining in the gloom. Daniel turned back to Arya. She sat upright now, stronger than before, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. But she was still too weak to fight. They've found us, Daniel said, his voice grim. We can't hide anymore. Arya touched her chest, feeling the steady rhythm of her new lungs. Then she looked at him, determination burning in her eyes. You gave me life, now I give you strength. Before Daniel could ask what she meant, Arya closed her eyes. Her body glowed faintly, energy pulsing from within. The walls trembled as if answering her call. The machines around them flickered, reacting to her presence. Daniel stepped back, stunned. What are you doing? He asked. Her voice echoed, stronger than before. The thing they feared. The thing they cut from me. It is still inside. Power they could not destroy. Light burst from her body, flowing into the machines, activating systems Daniel had abandoned years ago. Screens lit up, engines hummed, and the lab came alive as if it had been waiting for her. Daniel stared in awe. You're connected to them. Arya opened her eyes. They glowed like molten silver. They wanted to use me as their weapon. But now I use myself to survive. The soldiers outside reached the door, their weapons raised. Metal groaned as they began forcing it open. Daniel grabbed a plasma cutter from the bench, his heart pounding. He looked at Arya. She looked back, her new lungs glowing bright, her breath strong and steady. For the first time, she was not weak. Daniel tightened his grip on the cutter. Then let's make sure they regret coming here. The door shook violently. Sparks flew. Soldiers shouted. Arya stood tall beside him. the glow from her body filling the lab with light. Together, they waited for the door to fall. The mountain lab shook with the weight of soldiers pounding at the door. Sparks rained down as cutting torches carved through the metal. Daniel stood ready, the plasma cutter tight in his hands, his heart racing like thunder. Beside him, Arya stood taller than she had since the night they met. Her breaths came strong now, steady and deep. The artificial lungs glowed inside her, each breath giving her new strength. The soldiers shouted commands from outside. "Stand down! Surrender the fugitive!" Daniel glanced at Arya. Her silver eyes were burning with light, her skin shimmering faintly with energy. She shook her head. "If they take me, they silence the truth. They bury what I am, but if we fight, we show them." The metal door groaned, bending under the soldiers' tools. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. "Then we fight, together." The final sparks burst and the door crashed open. Soldiers poured in, armored, armed, their visors glowing red in the dim light. They raised their weapons at once. Daniel stepped forward, firing the plasma cutter. A beam of white-hot light shot across the room, forcing the soldiers back. Sparks exploded as metal shattered. "You picked the wrong house," he growled. But it wasn't Daniel they feared. It was Arya. She spread her arms, her body glowing brighter. The machines around the lab responded, screens lighting, engines roaring awake. The air hummed with invisible power as if the lab itself had become alive with her breath. One soldier fired. A bolt of energy shot across the room. Arya raised her hand and the bolt bent in the air, dissolving into sparks before it reached her. The soldiers froze, stunned. Her voice echoed strong and clear. "You called me dangerous. You called me a crime. But it is not me who is guilty. It is you." Daniel felt the hairs on his arms rise as her energy spread through the room. The machines he had once built but abandoned now moved as if guided by her will. Arms of steel shifted, lights blazed, and shields of pure force formed between them and the soldiers. The commander barked an order and the soldiers advanced again. But Arya's power surged. With one deep breath, she unleashed a wave of force that knocked them back like leaves in a storm. Their weapons scattered across the floor. Some soldiers crawled, others stumbled, but none dared move closer. Daniel stood in awe. She wasn't just surviving, she was defying them. The commander staggered to his feet, shouting, "She is property of the council." "Stand aside, human." Daniel's blood boiled. He stepped forward, rage burning in his chest. "She's not property. She's alive. She's free. And if you think you can take her, you'll have to take me too." The soldiers hesitated. A single human defying the entire council. But Daniel's voice carried more weight than weapons. His defiance was fire. Arya placed her hand on his shoulder, her glow softening. She looked at the soldiers, her eyes fierce but calm. "Go back to your masters. Tell them humanity will not bow. Tell them we breathe on our own now." The soldiers wavered. Their scanners flickered from Arya's energy, their formation breaking. The commander snarled and raised his weapon again. But before he could fire, Arya exhaled one final surge of power. The machines roared. The air split with blinding light and the soldiers were thrown back through the broken door, tumbling into the clearing outside. Silence followed. Only the hum of the lab remained. Daniel's arms shook as he lowered the plasma cutter. He looked at Arya, still glowing faintly, her breath strong, steady, alive. You saved us," she shook her head gently. "We saved each other." Outside, the council ship stirred, engines roaring as if preparing another attack. But then slowly they rose into the sky. They did not fire. They did not return. The soldiers gathered and retreated, vanishing into the clouds. Daniel watched them go, his chest heavy with relief and disbelief. "Why are they leaving?" Arya's silver eyes softened. "Because they know the truth now. You gave me back my life, and with it, a voice they cannot silence. If they kill us now, it will only spread further. They are afraid." Daniel sank onto a chair, his body trembling from exhaustion. He laughed quietly, the sound half relief, half disbelief. "One night. One knock at my door, and now the whole galaxy hates me." Arya smiled faintly, sitting beside him. Not hate, fear, and maybe respect. She touched her chest, feeling the steady beat of her new lungs. "You broke their law, but you kept a greater one, the law of life." Daniel looked at her, and for the first time in years he felt no emptiness in his house, no loneliness in his heart. The storm outside had passed, but a different storm had begun. "They won't forgive us," he said quietly. "No," Arya agreed. "But humanity will remember. One human fought against the council. One human built life where they brought death. That is the beginning of something greater. Daniel leaned back, exhaustion washing over him. Outside, the mountain wind howled, carrying away the last echoes of battle. Arya rested her head on his shoulder, her breath strong and steady, a sound that promised hope. He closed his eyes, a tired smile on his face. Then let it begin. And far beyond the clouds, the stars seemed brighter, as if watching the first breath of a new defiance.